With The Last of Us Part 3 all but confirmed at this point in time by Naughty Dog, obviously, guys, we're in the very early stages of The Last of Us Part 2 and the shelf life that will be The Last of Us Part 2. We don't even have multiplayer yet. Who knows what that's going to all encompass? We'll talk about, The Last of Us online and the multiplayer aspects of it later on in the show, but I want to talk about some theories that have come out, some of them that make no sense, others that, do somewhat make sense regarding The Last of Us Part 2 and what that could mean for The Last of Us Part 3 moving into the future. So let's talk about it. So, guys, in an article written by Jason Wojnar of Screen Rant, to try to make sense of Ellie and Abby's story in The Last of Us Part 2, game fans have come up with several theories, some more credible than others. Naughty Dog has once again knocked it out of the park with The Last of Us Part 2, which hit store shelves in the PSN store. Many plot elements from the PS4 game proved controversial, either from fans' personal opinions on how the story should have gone, or things they find nonsensical. So, at number 10, guys, what makes no sense is the two protagonists kill everyone but their main targets. First, Abby heads to the theater to kill Ellie after she finds her friends dead. She ultimately lets her and Dina live, but not before killing Jesse and brutally maiming Tommy. Years later, Ellie hunts Abby down to exact vengeance in Santa Barbara, only to let her live at the last moment. While the message about vengeance resounds clearly, it is less impactful when remembering the dozens of people they both killed beforehand. And look, for me, guys, I've stated this a number of times about this story. When it comes to this that doesn't make any sense, to me, The Last of Us Part 2 is about three things in particular. One is pain, two is revenge, and three is forgiveness. And throughout the course of the story, we see all three things. We see there's a lot of pain from either side. So let's just talk, for example, Abby and Ellie. They both lost something, someone close to them, or many things that were close to them. Obviously, the revenge was on both sides. One decided to not necessarily forgive Ellie, which being Abby, didn't necessarily forgive her, but at the same time, she let her live. The same can be said from, Ellie, when she had all the power in the world to kill Abby, she decided not to. And so the idea here is, guys, is that they forgave each other. It's almost like they both realized, look, we've lost someone, something, or many things along the journey. Now it's time for us to go our separate ways. And I wouldn't be surprised if they team up in like The Last of Us Part 3 to figure out what the origins, the infection, and things of that nature are. But I get it. I know why people would be upset about that whole ordeal. But I feel that Abby, when she had all the power to kill Ellie, she realized that Ellie's got to be someone special here. This is a special human being. There's a reason why, the things have transpired. And so that's why I felt like she spared her. Not because she liked Ellie or she necessarily forgave her, but I feel like she felt that she was a special, in one way or another. Whether, she kind of had this thought in the back of her mind that she was immune to the infection, whatever it might be. And then Ellie, the same kind of thing. She felt that Abby was underneath the surface a good person, and so they forgave each other. And so that's what I took from that. Number 9. What makes sense is Ellie's mother. Many were convinced that Ellie's mother, Anna, would play a significant part of the plot. This is based mostly on a poster from the ending of Uncharted 4 showcasing a fictional story called The Last of Us American Daughters. The poster was a pregnant woman resembling Ellie wearing a gas mask. Some also theorized that Abby was Ellie's mother after the first trailer showcasing her was released. And then, of course, Owen and Mel's deaths are something that make no sense. Few people think with a clear head when under the threat of extreme violence, but either Owen or Mel had enough time in the aquarium to tell Ellie of Mel's pregnancy. Had Ellie known, the encounter would have turned out differently. Instead, Ellie ends up ending Mel, which leads to Abby's rampage in the theater. And then, of course, at number 7, if the Fireflies wouldn't have made a cure. The first game's ending is a polarizing moment. Some understand and defend Joel's action, while others feel like he doomed the world's last chance at salvation. However, some wonder if Fireflies were further away from a vaccine than they let on. By their reasoning, just because Ellie has an immunity does not mean they could have used the samples to craft a vaccine, which is very, very true. I think that with that kind of power that the Fireflies would have, you don't know what they would have done with it at the end of the day. And I think, guys, that obviously they would have had to kill Ellie in order to get the samples needed for the vaccine, but I think, guys, that in my opinion, there's definitely room here that there are other people out there that are immune outside of just Ellie. Is she the only one that's immune to, the whole world? I feel like there's got to be others that are immune to this thing. And how are you immune is something, else as well. There could be, a million different ways in which this story could go moving forward. We've talked about at the end of The Last of Us Part 2, when she's leaving, she leaves that, the guitar out of the guitar case, which means to me that the story's left open, that she still has more to do before playing the guitar once again, even though she couldn't really play it without having, a couple of those fingers. But at the end of the day, I feel like she's going to figure out what started it all, what started the infection, and, how can she help it, or do something to better the world after all the darkness that kind of overtook herself as well as other people within The Last of Us Part 2. So we'll have to kind of wait and see on that. Now, why the group spare Tommy and Ellie? Many think that after killing Joel, the group went too easy on Tommy and Ellie. Of course, there would not be much of a game if Abby and her friends ended Ellie's life so early in the adventure. While the group considers their killing of Joel justified, Ellie was swearing vengeance right in front of them, so they probably should have gotten rid of her at that moment as well. Which I agree on this. Obviously, it wouldn't make much for her story, but guys, if you remember, there was, when the leaks first came out about The Last of Us Part 2, that Joel dies in it in a very brutal way. One of the leaks that came out was stating that Abby kills not only Joel, but also kills Ellie, and then you're forced to play as Abby the rest of the game after you kill Ellie. And so that's why there was so much backlash on this title, was not only that Joel died, but people were, the leaks were basically stating that Abby kills Ellie, and you're forced to play as Abby and to like her, or whatever the case might be, throughout the course of the rest of the journey, which obviously is not true. You play Ellie half the game, you play Abby half the game, and then you kind of go back and forth in the end. But, you could kind of break it down, like, why did they spare him? But, obviously it would have made for not as good of a story. Now, Ellie can still save the world. While this runs contrary to a previous fan theory, many feel Ellie still has a chance to give up her life for a vaccine given the state of the world at the end of The Last of Us Part 2. The Fireflies have regrouped and made a base in Santa Barbara. If word gets back to Ellie and their medical facilities are like they were in Salt Lake City, she very well could go under the knife again and donate her life in the name of saving humanity. Which absolutely, that is something that maybe she now has the power to say, look, I'm willing to give my life so that, you guys can create a vaccine. My thought, though, is what would be very interesting, guys, if this was something, like, I just want to see what the origins here are of this infection and such, that, we play as Ellie, she figures out what it is, and maybe it's gloom and doom, like there's no way around getting the vaccine other than herself, but maybe there's others that are immune as well. It could make for something very interesting moving into The Last of Us Part 3. Why doesn't Nora lie to Ellie? One of the most brutal scenes in the first half of the game sees Ellie torture Nora for information on Abby's location. Nora previously breathed in spores, so her life is already doomed. Knowing this, why didn't she just lie to Ellie and give a false location? Maybe she wasn't thinking straight after all the pain and fear of death, but it would have saved her friends a lot of tragedy if she had lied. Just true, once again, just something that wouldn't have made the story as interesting. They could have probably figured it out, but who knows? Ellie is connected to the cult. This theory was circulating before the game's release based on Ellie's scar. Many noted the Seraphites' scars in the trailers and thought Ellie's eyebrow scar was connected to the group. Years ago, Neil Druckmann said the scar had more relevance, which was yet to be revealed, and fans thought it would be explored in the sequel. Ultimately, however, the game does not touch on this at all. So this is something, guys, that would be very interesting, to say the least. Is Ellie actually the villain in this entire story? Even though you could say that she's a villain because, it's like, it's a free-for-all. It's like the Wild West days back, in the Last of Us franchise at this point in time. Because it's very much so, everything's very run down, and everything's being run by groups and cliques and things of that nature. And so Ellie being a part of the cult, that would be something very interesting. It's hard to say. She does brutally, kill her enemies and such in significant ways. And it's like, where did she learn all of this? There's a lot of questions there, which obviously she could be a part of the cult. What if we're playing the villain the entire time throughout the course of this series? At number 2, why is Ellie the only one with immunity? We already kind of touched on this. Ellie is so special because of her immunity, a plot point which plays only a minor role in the sequel. Why is she the only one? People are still being born, and it is difficult to believe she is the only person who resists the infection. There has to be at least one other person who similarly got bit and discovered their own immunity. I agree with this 100%. Imagine if Abby is immune, or imagine if JJ, after Dina gave birth, imagine if JJ is immune. It's interesting, guys, but I do think there's got to be other people who are immune in this world. And then Ellie already returned to Jackson. Some fans note Ellie's lack of weapons and fully healed wounds in the last scene as a sign more time has passed than most would think. They also say she looks healthier than in the prior Santa Barbara chapter. Perhaps these improvements mean she has already returned to Jackson and Dina has forgiven her. If this was the case, however, then why is only Ellie's stuff left at the farmhouse? Well, if this theory is true, Ellie might not have been back to Jackson yet, and that's why she started playing the guitar and such. It was kind of like she was going back to Jackson to pick up the rest of her stuff. That is something that could be true. My only thinking with that is guys, we could go on ad nauseum about these last sequences, and that's what makes a video game such an awesome thing, and The Last of Us in particular, because this is one that we're going to be talking about until The Last of Us Part 3 comes out, and I am very excited about that, because these theories are very interesting, and it leads us to where could this go in The Last of Us Part 3? Where is the story going? Is she going to, who knows? I mean, are they going to move on to another character in The Last of Us Part 3? Are we going to play as Ellie again? Are we going to play as somebody else? Are we going to be switching between Ellie and Abby once again? Is it going to be, are they going to be trying to take down a corporation that started the infection, similar to like Resident Evil? Or are they going to, just try to figure out the origins of the infection? Are they going to is she going to go after Abby once again? Or who knows where it's going, guys? But I believe there's a lot more story left to be told. And that was a big, one of the symbols that kind of gave me that impression was when she left the guitar next to the windowsill instead of putting it into the guitar case, closing that chapter of her story. It's like she's leaving that chapter still open, the one thing that's connecting her to Joel. So we'll see where it goes in The Last of Us Part 3. I'm excited. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Which theories do you think make sense? What doesn't make sense to you guys? Let me know what you guys think, and let's have a real conversation about it.